Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this important learning collaborative session supporting HIV positive peers and volunteers in the workplace. We all learn in many different ways, but having lived experience is something so unique and irreplaceable that provides that personable touch to our HIV and aging services. So today we have a fabulous speaker series to help us understand how to create more intentional, inclusive, and supportive workplaces for people living and aging with HIV. And before we get started, I want to acknowledge that our team is based on Ramaytush Ohlone land. May our collective efforts respect, restore, and promote the well-being of the native people of our land, both here and everywhere that we hold community. And for those of you that are joining for the first time, the Care and Wellbeing Center is a regional training and technical assistance program funded through the Gilead HIV/AIDS Positivity Initiative. Our service region is shown here. We cover 14 states across the Western United States, and our goal is to improve the quality of and access to care for all people living with HIV over 50 by strengthening service providers like yourself. And when this session is complete, please remember to fill out the evaluation afterwards. And we really value your input on the evaluation because it helps us make sure our trainings really help you. And especially that these sessions are offered for free and your feedback is super important to us just to have us understand how we can improve our services. And just some Zoom housekeeping here. We'll have some dedicated Q&A breaks, but please feel free to drop your questions into the chat. Additionally, if you want to discuss the topic further, drop it in the chat, and we'll consider it for a breakout session later. And then here are our learning objectives. We hope by the end of the session, you'll be able to take something back to your organization and create more intentional, inclusive, and supportive spaces for people living with HIV. We have a wonderful panel of speakers for you today. First up is Linda Scruggs from the Ribbon Organizing Center. She's an expert trainer in destigmatizing HIV and empowering those living with HIV, and we're so thankful that she's here with us today. So I'm going to pass it off to Linda Scruggs, who's going to start off her presentation on balancing lived experiences in the workplace.
I would like to first just framing a few disclaimers. How can we create spaces for people living with HIV in the workspace, right? So that's what the focus area that I was asked to talk about today. What are some of the strategies that we're going to manage spaces around our team in effective, authentic, what's appropriate for staff? I'll give you one piece is I won't read all the slides to you in today's conversation. These are 4 bullets you'll find as a presenter. I'm often will give a disclaimer that I'll have slides, but I really love telling the story of spending many years doing this type of work with organizations across the US and globally. Next slide, JB. Couple of disclaimers and a little bit of guidance. I'm talking to you today from my thoughts, my work, from myself, Ribbon, the organizing center. And these are not the thoughts and words of any third party or our funders. I always give that disclosure because not everyone's going to agree what I say, and I'm okay to agree to disagree with folks. I am a woman diagnosed with HIV for over 32 years. I'm a woman who actually worked in the direct peer role or person living with HIV. In my early diagnosis, I spent 10 years at Johns Hopkins HIV/AIDS service clinic. The first 6 years was in a peer role and went into management in some other places after that. I spent the last couple of decades really working with clinical services, CBOs, around creating peer spaces. And some of that came out of that experience in the early epidemic at Johns Hopkins, but a lot of it came out of talking to really brilliant people living with HIV and what's working, what's not working, looking at everything from clinical design to what the walls look like, to what the people inside the walls look like, feel like, and how that shows up overall. I will ask you, I am a little informal. I started vacation on yesterday. So just because JB called me, I said, I'll come. So this presentation, I often do these presentations very informal. because sometimes it can get a little pushy. If you feel like I'm pushing, it's okay, push back. I invite you to raise your hand. I invite you to put questions in the chat. We don't have to wait till we go to the breakout. This type of conversation really is best when we're having a dialogue. So I invite you to share some of your experiences when we're talking about them, add some input to it. Good, bad, or indifferent. We will talk and we will get through this. I know there are many experts on this webinar today. We all won't be able to share, but one thing I definitely always do at the Ribbon Organizing Center, we're here to support you in the work that you do. So I won't wait till we get to the last slide. Please feel free to jot down my email and we'll follow up. As I said, my vacation started yesterday. I'm back in the office on January 3rd. So if you email me before January the 3rd, I will not respond. So JB, let's keep moving. So the first thing I noted, whether I'm talking about peers, people living with HIV, and I use the term living experiences. Often people say lived experiences, but we are people who are living. There isn't a cure. So lived is a past tense. So you'll often hear me and trying to change some language that we're living this experience as staff or within our programs. Really, we know I don't think I have to argue the benefits of why do we have peers? Why do we have people living with HIV as part of our teams? Some positions, this is an intentional space. So this slide is when we're talking about bringing somebody with intention who is focused as a person adding value to our clinical or our staff team, right? So not someone who we're hiring a case manager and the person who applies happen to also be a person living with HIV. That's a little different versus us actually hiring a peer role, someone who's going to add some secret sauce to an already fabulous team, right? So we're going to talk a little bit of what does both of those look like, right? Because there are times where I need a case manager, I need a social worker, I need an ED. So they're going to come with a certain skill set, a certain academia, certain different things, possibly, than if I'm looking for someone who's going to hit these streets, right? Someone who's going to bring some rough around the edges that I need to create balance, to look and identify some focus spaces. So we're going to talk about what does both of those look like and how do we really create intentional spaces for however that person might show up and however that person might, and how do we best blend them in to whatever the culture of our organization is. Because I'm sure across the many of you that are on it today, we have different organizational cultures. And often what I find is that's where our challenges come in place. Really defining who we're bringing, why we're bringing them, and how do we orient them into what it looks like to be on this side of the table. So let's have a quick conversation. JB, if you can go to the next slide. So what happens? It really is, we have organizations that have staff and we have peers. And often we're trying to balance two different types of people. Where peers are staff and staff are peers. They just are different types of peers and different types of staff. So I want to just assume for a moment, just imagine the perfect world would have been back in 1980 something. Some of you may not even been born, or maybe you was like me that was only 2 years old when all this started. No, that was a joke. Everybody laughed. That when we first started hiring peers, when we first found that they were secret sauce was getting people who was closest to the epidemic, getting people who was closest to what the issue was to help us really engage community, right? So if we're first thinking about this, the first thing we have to do is really provide in-services to our staff. We have to educate our staff. And often we find when we're talking to our staff, right? Because usually the challenges is our staff and those other people. I didn't say that. Y'all said that. I heard it in the chat, right? So it's the staff and it's those other people who get to go to conferences, who get to come in late. Well, where are they? We haven't seen them, right? And they don't do things quite the way we do it. So why aren't we educating our staff is the first thing when we're talking about integrating, because it really is an integration of an organizational culture blending a new need, right? So there's a new need. It's just like when imagine you as an organization, like I'll use a perfect example. When COVID happened, when everybody went to Zoom, everybody in the organization got Zoom training. Everybody got Zoom training. Something new was happening. We always going to have to work differently. It's the same concept when you're bringing in a new element of your program. And peers for many organizations are new elements. So what does it look like? So staff in services, staff training is really around organizational readiness to that something different is going on, something different is going to happen. And how do we get ready for this new culture of people? Because they are smack little different. Some of them are just a little different. Some of them feel special, and some of them I just don't understand. And we're not even going to talk about the ones that's under 25. Because I know some of y'all forgot what under 25 was like. I don't forget. I keep pictures so I can remember, laugh at myself. Anyhow, that's another conversation. When we're talking about peers, we're also talking about welcoming them into the workplace. Some of our peers or people living with HIV may be first timers into a formal workplace setting. One of the things I learned this even in the early 90s, when I first started doing this in the late 80s, early 90s, was not everyone has worked into formal settings. And you may say, oh, we're really a laid back organization, but your organization. As soon as you become the organization, you're no longer laid back because you've had to do some structural, formal something to become that organization. So as soon as you've done that, you've lost some of your laid back, right? And you've lost some of that space that your peers would have been more relaxed in. So there is a part of having peers on your team or people living with HIV, living experiences, individuals, particular ones that are new. Those ones that we see in clinic or we see in program, we just love them because they're out loud. They talk about HIV. Disclosure isn't an issue. And we just so attracted to them. But what we haven't been able to do, we haven't seen them on the other side of the table. And there's a part of integrating people living with HIV into our programs that if I'm a social worker, if I'm utilizing my social worker skills, I can't code that in billing. I can't code mentoring new staff in this new capacity. But someone has to teach or work with a client who's now staff on how no longer to be the client. There's no class for that. There's no class for that. See, folks are still coming. I'm gonna go back because I'm gonna come back to that. Another big piece around balancing staff and peers often is also hiring multiple peers, hiring multiple folks. Often that may be hard, and I know funding is less and less attractive about hiring peers, but sometimes that one person does not create enough balance and it doesn't create enough understanding. So we're making judgment on one versus really creating teams of peers. So then we have different focuses and different ideas that we're looking to work from. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to come back for in just a second. And I've already talked about training around some of the organizational cultures. We have to teach our peers those pieces. Many of us hire great and wonderful folks, but we don't really take the time to show them how to be the peer inside the organization. Like, what does it mean to go to the other side of the table? So if I've been on this side of case management, and if case management recommended me, you guys help me do the application, you coach me through the interview process, but then I got the job and no one helped me. Now I'm on the other side of the table. And we're not going to talk about those folks I used to hang out with that's still on that side of the table. And things I don't supposed to do, I'm gonna do that in a couple slides. Go ahead to the next slide for me, JB. So I'm going to just kind of structure us a little bit in this conversation, or structure me, because I told y'all I'm on vacation and my attention deficit turned off yesterday at 6 o'clock Eastern time. So I didn't have to take my meds today, but I took them just because I was doing this presentation. When you're hiring people living with HIV, and even if you've already done it, right? So an assignment is, if you've already done it, I want you to go back and do some of what we're talking about today. Like, why are you hiring this position? And if you've already done it and you're having challenges with your person with lived experience, you're going to have to go back and remember, what was it that you were looking for, not in the person, but what was the position? What secret? Because I'm going to tell you, having peers, having people living with HIV on your staff is the secret sauce. But you got to understand, what did you need the secret sauce for? That's what's most important. So what was it you're hiring for the new position? What was the skills needed? What did you need in this secret sauce? What made it the secret? Was it the mayonnaise? Was it the relish? Was it the mustard? Was it the sriracha? What was it that made it the secret, right? What are the skills that you were looking for in this person? Was it personality? Was it their willingness to speak up? Was it what their willingness or their ability to have basic computer skills? Did they need to have, what did they need to have? You have to know that as the hiring manager, as the hiring agent, as the person who's going to be working with this individual or the teams. Is there a job description? Is there a clear job description with stated roles and responsibilities in those same skills? Good morning, whoever that is in the chat. I just said good morning, Linda. Good morning. Is there a job description that meets the need for the position? Often we'll create job descriptions just to get a job, to get the peer through HR, or to get the peer through the university system, right? And I get that, worked at Johns Hopkins. So you need an inside-outside game. So I need a job description to get them through HR at Johns Hopkins or University of San Francisco. I need that job description, but then I need this working job description that my peer understand what their job is they're actually going to do today. Because that job description that got us through HR, because we know that systems can mess you up sometimes, right? So that job description is the job description I had to push to make this happen. But this tailored kind of informal job description is what I need you to address and be able to function through with the team, with case management, with the nurses, with whoever this team is, educators, other peers, whatever this team is. And they have to have roles and responsibility. Everything from outreach, whether it's down, in the neighborhood, whether it's, in at night shift, doing whatever it is, it has to have it. And you have to have already thought what that is. And you have to be able to help your peers to understand that's what this is and how that is accomplished. One of the things I always tell hiring managers, and I tell folks who come to Ribbon that hire, when we're interviewing, and I love people to interview, we know how to interview really good. I will almost ask some of you guys, raise your hand when you interview really good, have great resumes. And we spend a lot of time on resumes. We send our resumes to our friends. Can you look at this? Make sure it look good, right? Your resumes and stuff are really good, and you probably can do all that, but you've never done that in this organization. So even if your peers, your people living with HIV have resumes, or some of them don't even have resumes, right? I think, what is it we tell them at Ribbon? That's in your resume or your job history description, or I think we have some other term, I'll figure it out in a minute. But what I always tell my hiring managers is, talk to your interviewees about, this is great about what you did over there. What we're going to teach you is, how does that work within this culture? How do those skills work when you're coming in here? Because I don't want you to do it the way you did it over there, because there's a reason why you're not over there anymore. They didn't like you, or you didn't like them. So we want to talk about what you're going to bring into this culture. And we're going to teach you how we want you to do it, that it fits here, and that we don't want you to bring the battle or your last work trauma. Because, sometimes we hire people that somebody else was glad they got rid of. Right? So some of us training our peers is also training people how to work in our organizations, helping to smooth out some of the spaces that you see quality, you see skills, but they haven't done it within your organizations. And that's building internal relationships with people who may not have had these type of experiences. It takes time to hire people who may not have had as formal work experiences, as formal professional supervision experiences, or even academia. But I also tell you, not always academia will give you the experiences of being in a workplace, right? So let me keep going. I think I already talked about interviews a little bit. Training is, employer training is important. Workloads and assignments. Often we find people living with HIV, our peers, they don't have assignments. We'll give them a couple things to do. Some of them may not have figured out how to do critical thinking on what's next. So we have to create workloads and assignments to help keep them going. Because what happens if you ain't got nothing to do? You do one or two things. You're going to get bored and do nothing, or you're going to become very creative. You become very creative. And because possibly you haven't been given boundaries or balance training or hierarchy or brand training, you done created some super stuff. You done created some super sauce, not just secret sauce. You done created some super sauce, and you've gone out there, and it's real good in the streets. But then somebody found out about it, like, well, what is that? What you done went and did? And now you're in trouble. The streets like it, but you in trouble because it don't match the brand. That ain't the way we do it here. Now the streets like it though. And you out there kikiing, acting up, but it don't match the brand. So is it the peer? Is it personally with HIV? Or did the organization miss something? Because they ain't had nothing to do. And you can get bored. Not everybody really okay with coming to work with nothing to do. And there are some of those folks in our jobs that's trying to come to work with nothing to do. They'll stay on FaceTime and Instagram all day. But then there's some of us that are just geniuses and don't always know what to do with this geniality. And we're going to go figure out some stuff for our people. We're going to go figure out some stuff for our people. And we're going to go do it. And y'all ain't told us what we couldn't do. So we in a position with a little bit of authority, and they love it. We got these ID badges, we got all this stuff. That you working down there? Yeah, come on. I got a bus pass. I got an extra bus pass. Don't tell nobody I'm gonna give you one of these tokens. I'm gonna give you one of these day passes. Come on, we going up in the hood. We going up in the neighborhood. We going downtown. Come and hang out with me while I go pass some of this information out. But ain't nobody gave me no assignment. So now I'm just being busy. Now I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm being busy in the way that you don't want me to be busy. It's important not to leave people out there astray, and then we want to create corrections. It is our responsibility as the employee and supervisor. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. Having a schedule. If you particularly hire newer staff, because again, I'm really right now talking about newer people into the workforce or newer people into your workforce, into your organization, making sure they understand what's expected of them. Because again, if you have somebody new to coming to work every day or coming to work 4 days a week, and in this new world when we don't even have to show up into the office, and we trying to figure out accountability, like if they really at work, they only got to come to the office 2 days a week. Well, where they at? They on a Zoom and they off screen all the time. I need everybody on. When I do staff meeting, everybody got to come on screen at least the first 10 minutes. Then you can go off screen. I need to know that you ain't in your bed at 11 o'clock. I need to know. Because my staff are the only ones that don't want to come to the office. I want to come to the office every day. And so the first 15 minutes, everybody got to be on screen. Then they can go get in their cars and all that afterwards. But the first 15 minutes, you need to be by the computer. But that's teaching and training accountability spaces in your schedule. Where do you supposed to be? Because you can be working from home, but you only supposed to be at the mall working from home if you're doing outreach or if you're doing something at the mall. I'm just saying that's a different presentation. Let me go down here to this last bullet to supervision, because we can spend some time in supervision. I ain't getting in nobody's stuff because I'm on the West Coast and y'all on the East Coast and y'all on the West Coast. And it's the holidays. Traffic is too busy in the air for y'all to come get me. It's the person assigned to supervise this person experienced in supervising people living with HIV. As I said, it takes time. This is not the supervisors of a duty, other duties assigned. This is the person who's going to have some tolerance, some patience in the time accounted to building, mentoring, and checking some boxes to ensure that that person has what they need to champion this particular, whether new role, new assignment, redefined position in your organization. It is the secret sauce. You don't want to fish the sandwich without the secret sauce. It's the piece that they're going to keep coming back for. It's the piece that makes the difference in many places. So does the person who's supervising them have what they need in time? Do they have what they need in training? Do they have the skills or the resources to really prepare this person to be part of the full team of your organization? Next slide. I'm going to take a break and breathe for a second. Any questions, any thoughts? What's happening? Anything in the chat I need to go to? We're good, JB?
Sorry, let me unmute. You do have one question. Are you doing any work to help create groups of mentors or buddies who are not contained within your organization while being facilitated loosely by your organization? So essentially, do you like build this culture of mentorship like for other organizations?
So at Ribbon, I'm gonna come back to that. So at Ribbon, we do a number of ways how we support people with building staff capacities around peers and spaces. But there are other ways. I'll come back to that one. Let me stay here for a second. So I want to spend a couple of slides talking about providing supervision, because again, I think this is really key. And this is the hard part, because often peer, and this is what I hear both from peers and supervisors of peers. So this next conversation I'm talking about really is coming from peers from across the country as well as supervisors in that space. So this has a couple of transitions, so you can go ahead, JB, transition for me. So supervision, it is about directing, supporting, and keeping abreast of their work. Accountability. Nobody wants to be that person, but to have a rock star team, supervisors have to supervise, right? You don't have to micromanage. Now, don't do that. That's not what I said. Don't nobody got no time for that foolishness, right? But you have to give them a timeline. You have to give them assignments, but then you have to give them the courtesy to review what they had. You have to give them the support, if you make, one of the things I always tell all my staff, whether they peer staff, new staff, they can have 4 PhDs. If you make a mistake, I'm here to support you. Come to me first. I don't care what it is. Come to me first. I don't care if I'm in Zimbabwe, in Kalamazoo. Email, text me, smoke screen me, get it to me, and I'm going to stop the bus. But if I don't know the bus is coming, I don't know how to stop it. Now I'm gonna stop the bus and I'm gonna talk it, and they're gonna be like, okay, she good. Now me and you gonna have a conversation later, but you have to be the greatest support to your peers. They're gonna make some mistakes. Your team, whether they're peers or not, you as a supervisor have to be the support mechanism for your team to be good, bad, or indifferent so that they can grow. Mistakes happen and we grow. Errors happen and we grow. We learn from them. But if they're covering up their mistakes, they get bigger and then they're explosive and then it blows up within the department or the organization. I'd rather them come to us at a small mistake so we can teach them. I'll stop the bus and I'll cover, I'll lie, do whatever I got to do. I'm going to stop the bus. Now we're going to deal with you later, maybe some reprimand, maybe some suspension, maybe what. But I have to stop the bus and I have to create the support in a safe space that they will come. They're going to say something or do something. You got a person living with HIV who's unskilled. They're going to say something to do something because they're in a helper mode and they don't know the skills of helper. They don't necessarily know all the balances places, all the boundary steps yet, or where they can't help or when they need to call social work or they need to call someone. So you're constantly have to be directing. You constantly have to be abreast of what they're doing. Not micromanaging, just being informed of their caseload. Who are they talking to? What are the challenges? You have, this person can't be other duties as assigned as a peer supervisor. You have to be involved so that it's the state of the organization, the state of the person, but also you as the supervisor. Next slide, please. Clear supervision. Make your agency, it makes it more efficient. Again, and unfortunately, I hear this in supervisors, you get judged by the organization because your supervisor is going to supervise you. Your supervisor is going to supervise you. They're not going to supervise you like the peer. They're going to supervise you as the professional, as the academia, as the accountable one in a different space. And you should be building the capacity of your peer that one day you won't be the great person supervising them because they'll grow out of a peer position into a mainstream regular part of the staffing. You know, staff, the peer should not be this carved out special position. Often in many organizations it is. It don't have to be. As clear supervision is recognizing and stopping problems. We already talked about that. Not being passive. You know, address issues. If you see it, address it. It's going to help them grow. Make them feel like they're part of the group. You know, they're not separate. They're not going to get some special treatment because they're peers. Heck, you know, I won't say that. It's not my meeting. I was going to say something. I won't say that. You have to come to a ribbon call for me to say that one. Go ahead and do a transition. Direct that again. Give written explanations of responsibilities of skills, you know. Again, and I say written, you know, because again, if you're hiring people into your workplaces, you know, you should be hiring people with the skills to have comprehension, to have writing ability, have reading ability, orienting them and training them, keeping them informed of each other, and have a working file on them, whether it's electronic. They should know that they are accountable to you and the organization for what's being asked of them within their job description, within their roles and responsibilities. Often we find that people living with HIV in many organizations, they're kind of just out there and they're not having the roles and responsibility. They're not having the structure that prepares them for advancement. We have people who've been doing the same job in the same position for 17, 18 years. Nobody nowhere in the world should have the same job for 18 years, just getting a 2% COLA every year. That means somebody nowhere has chosen to help that person grow. Nobody, even housekeeping changes positions. I've seen people come into organizations as housekeepers within hospitals and universities and grow. We had peers who've been the peer, same title, same closet. There used to be a closet. We put a desk in there, changed everything out, and put a picture on the wall. 17, 18 years. Because what? They're just doing enough just to keep that position versus us helping and seeing the value of people and helping them grow and make room for the next person who needs an entry into our world, for the next young person, the next older person. You know, as we're entering into this aging community, we're finding more and more people that are aging, that are coming into the workforce for some of them for the first time in mainstream working positions. So they've been working, but now they're looking at mainstream, they're coming to work with us. So they've been in, small, menial jobs, but now they're finding value in the opportunity to enter into HIV spaces, and we need to help build their capacities, so that they too can help build, grow, and learn and make room for the next person. Leadership has people connected to them both in the front and in the back. We all move together. You move up, I move up. They move up because they're with me. We all should be moving, and we should be preparing people to move and not stay in the same closet for 17, 18 years. I hope I don't step in nobody's shoes. I hate when I go do site visits and meet people and they'll introduce somebody. Oh, she's been here for 15 years. It's like, well, why she been in that closet for 15 years? Okay, that's another presentation. Go to the next slide, JB, for these people. Put me off. Again, talking about in supervision, you probably saying, why she keep talking about supervision? Because the supervisors, we are the people who are there to ground the peers. We're there, the people who ground the people living with HIV, whether they're older than us or they're younger than us. And I have supervised folks younger than me and 20 and 30 years older than me. It's not easy. Sometimes it's hard. And sometimes you get them old cantankerous staff. It's like when you apply for the job, and I was a supervisor when you apply for the job, that's a different presentation. Because there is presentations on how to take care of, how to supervise people who are aging older than you, because it is uncomfortable sometimes, and apply for people who supervise people who are smarter than you, who has more skills than you. I was at Johns Hopkins, my last position. They was like, how are you supervising the pharmacist? Well, he know how to do pharmacy, but he don't know how to oversee this program. I ain't down in the pharmacy. I'm overseeing him on a multidisciplinary team. I'm not the full supervision. So again, accountability. So let me get back to these people living with HIV. Helping your clients understand, not your clients, forgive me, helping your people living with HIV as they're part of your team, helping them understand what training that you need to consider, whether they're new to HIV workforces or they have been working with organizations for many years. Again, because someone may be coming to your organization out of the workforce from some other work organization, but you don't necessarily know what those experiences have been. So it's important for you to have your own training to make sure that staff has what they need for training. JB, we lost the slides. He'll be back with us. I'm going to go through the list. It's confidentiality. Understanding what confidentiality is in your organization, not in a support group, in your organization. What does that mean? What does that mean now that I'm on this side of the table? And what liability comes with confidentiality? Not just saying, oh, this person with HIV. You can't be at the club outing people. You can't be out on the weekend talking about your clients. Tell people, oh, they from the neighborhood, or they're from somewhere. Confidentiality now, what does that look? It looks different when you're on the other table, outside the table. Role conflicts. And I use role conflict very broadly. That's right, HIPAA. Role conflicts. So, because now I'm on the other side of the table, JoJo, John, and Maria, they know me from hanging out and doing all we do. What does that look like when I work here and I'm doing this and I'm doing this, and this? Where's the balance of time and representation of the organization? You love it. And you love people say, well, I can do what I want to do when I'm on the weekend, but you're on a weekend event representing the organization. So what does that look like? Those are conversations and trainings your organization have to consider. What does that look like? I was having a conversation with a board organization recently, and the board decided that they can no longer drink when they're with the staff of the organization because some of the board members was drinking too much with staff. Literally, it was uncomfortable. The staff was watching their board members drink that much. The organization have to think about when are role conflicts important so you can share that with your team. And not just the peers, but all teams. You know, there's some organization roles where supervisors and staff do hang out in same clubs, drink together, party together, and all the extracurriculars together. But when is that a role conflict? Those are decisions and discussions that organizations have to make, and it can't be unique to people living with HIV because now it's about discrimination. And you have to protect the organization brand. And it can't be about the person living with HIV can't do this. It has to be an organization discussion around role conflicts, limits, and liabilities. Because again, the brand is the organization, which has to be protected. And again, you can't say, oh, they different, because you can believe that case manager, your nurses, your whoever else is in your organization, your accountant, your HR person are looking at everybody as the same level of equity. Ethical issues. These are just, again, a list of things that are very important if you're hiring people living with HIV. I would say this is for all staff. At Ribbon, most of our staff get this type of training, and we're not a direct service organization, but because our staff are in conferences and working with people all the time, we want them to know this. Cross-culture issues. You're working in, I know you guys on the West Coast, particularly in San Francisco and spaces, you're seeing cross cultures, right? Not cultural sensitivity. What does it mean to work with people in your workspaces that look different from you, that have different beliefs? You know, what does that look like? Not before there's an issue, but just how do we as an organization, what is our space? Again, much as you can talk about your organizational culture, it's important. When you're talking about people living with HIV and working, and I know my time, I have a couple of minutes, I think, right, JB? What's my time? Couple of minutes? Okay. I want to say this last thing, this last thing I have to say, go to the next slide, JB. I know I'm gonna have a breakout, but if I leave you with anything, this is what I told you guys, you know, we want people living with HIV as part of our teams because they do it like nobody else. They connect to community. They bring another value of everything to what we do, you know. And I don't want to say it's just people living with HIV that can bring challenges to our organizations, because that's absolutely is not true. That's absolutely is not true. But I will tell you, if you have persons living with HIV, particularly if they're working in peer roles where they're talking with peers, when they're talking with other people about their life challenges, they're balancing their life spaces, and people are trying to just be themselves, and they're talking to their peers about how do I just want to be me. The one thing I would ask you to walk away and consider, how can your organization help your peers balance what information they're getting? So one of the things we do here with our One Peer program, as well as I've done in many other places, even when I have Hopkins, all of our peers have to see someone of a mental health space that they learn how to dump other people's stuff. Some of the challenges we find and stresses we find that happens with our clinic folks in our peer programs, it really was because they held on to other people's stuff and they didn't know what to do with it because we told them they couldn't give it away. We told them they had to be keepers of information, but we didn't train them how to release other people's stuff. So peers, I highly recommend, if you have peers working in your programs, that part of whether within your clinical services or within your social work, if you have access to social work, if you have MOUs to social workers, whatever you have, that you have a way that your peers can see someone at least once a month, not just about their stuff, about their workspace and how they're managing and what they're doing with the information they're getting, and how do they release that challenges where many of our peers are sometimes in the same lines. Some of them are struggling with minimum income. Some of them are struggling with limited household housing, homelessness, marginalized incomes, a number of things. So they're struggling often with the same thing that they're supporting other people with. So making sure that they're having support, mental health support, is a key element to maintaining your secret sauce. I'm going to stop there. Turn it back to JB. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda. Like, very much appreciate the insight that you give around really building inclusive spaces for people living and aging with HIV in the workplace. I think we have we have so many questions in the chat, not gonna lie. Like, it's a little hard to like choose one, but I'm going to scroll up to Shakina, I think. Sorry if I pronounce your name incorrectly. She said, I'm great conversation. I'm a peer and often see that balance, needed training, cultural language and justice, organizational structure can be challenging to learn, adopt, and use. How do you develop support to enable peers' success?
I think if you are in an organization and you're a part of the leadership of the organization or your staff person supporting peers, it really is working with your in-service and your staff, to ensure that you have a wraparound service that supports your staff. Do your staff understand the role of the peers? Do they understand the work of peers? Often when I see organization, particularly if you have case managers, if you have social work, if you have any of the helping field or partners in your organization, those are the peer people who should be working close to your peers. Those people also can be the threat to your peers. So anything that's threatening, you bring them close, right? Bring them close simply because they can help you if they have better understanding of how your peers are working. And that threat is not necessarily negative. It's about them making sure and wanting to be sure that peers have the skills to support clients in a way that they've done in the academia training setting. So often when I have the access to have social work, I'll have social work be part of the training team to conduct some of these sessions, because they do have the skills and the foresight to help peers understand the balance of boundaries, the balance of when they refer, the balance of when they transfer. So the more your staff can trust what peers are doing, the better champions they'll understand of that secret sauce.
Thank you. And again, you have so many questions in the chat. So
I see. I'll try to save the chat. Yeah, I'll
yeah,
try to
got
save the
you.
chat. Yeah.
But Linda's contact information is here as well. I also saw in the chat that like how do we get more workshops from Linda Scruggs? Again, she is part of the Ribbon Organizing Center. They put on really dope workshops and webinars like all year also through the Gilead HIV/AIDS Positively Initiative. So go ahead and get her contact information down.
Is one more transition.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's it. I'm out.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, so we hope to see you in 2024. Let us go and go through the chat to see what different topic areas as well she can address. And again, like these might be extended trainings and possibly like in services for your team. So again, thank you so much, Linda, and appreciate your time and your expertise. And thank you for all of the work that you do. And then I'm going to be passing it off to our good friend Jax Kelly, and he is going to be telling us about the work that they do over at Let's Kick Ass, AIDS Survivor Syndrome over in Palm Springs.
Thanks, JB. It's so good to be here, everybody. It's great to see some of your faces. Everybody who's online and showing up, it's great to see you. I'm going to go to the next slide. Thanks. Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about just, I have all this about what I'm doing now, but you know what? Listening to Linda and hearing about the evolution, I think, that some of us go through in working for organizations. I've been living with HIV since 2006, and right from the beginning, I just started throwing myself into volunteer work in HIV, and so I worked with a number of organizations in Southern California and started off doing things like HIV testing, counseling, and peer support, and became an emotional group facilitator. So many of those roles, I saw so many people who were like me, HIV positive, and knew to actually working in organizations on the grassroots level. And that was a real learning experience for me, because not only because I had already had a whole nother life before I was diagnosed with HIV. And I was a banker in New York, and I had gotten a law degree. And so to actually work on the grassroots level in HIV was really totally new for me. And I just really I can't say enough about how working on the grassroots level is so informative. I think people who, I'm sure we've all met administrators in HIV settings who are great administrators, great supervisors in their jobs, but seem to not have had that experience working in the grassroots. And somehow they end up struggling with a lot of the things that I think Linda was talking about in terms of that kind of empathy with their employees, the kind of being able to put themselves in the shoes of people who are HIV peers. And we kind of miss out, I think, when we do have, HIV organizations that aren't led by people who've had grassroots experience. So I just want to say that a little bit. And then you can see here on the screen, I'm serving on a number of different organizations. I've been leading Let's Kick Ass since 2019. And that was an interesting experience in itself, if only because I had moved from Los Angeles to Palm Springs 10 years ago. And I'd gotten involved with a number of different things. And I actually kind of left HIV behind for a little bit, because I had worked on the Los Angeles County Commission on HIV. And it was kind of moving to Palm Springs was a nice break for me in a little way. I guess some of us do, as Linda had pointed out, sometimes some of us do experience burnout from being in these roles after a while. So it was good to be out here in the desert, get the fresh air, do some hiking, do all those kind of nice things. And what dragged me back into it, I think more than anything else, was I had actually decided to do fundraising for Let's Kick Ass back when I was a president. Well, actually, when I was named Mr. Palm Springs Leather in 2018. And I started doing some fundraising for Let's Kick Ass. And there came to be a point where the prior president and founder was going overseas and asked me if I would be willing to take on the organization. And I did. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that too. But the other things here I have is there's a California Equity Advisory Committee on Aging and Disability that I sit on. The California Planning Group is an advisory group for the Office of AIDS in the state of California. And also I sit on the steering committee of the Reunion Project, which is the national organization for long-term survivors of HIV. You can go to the next slide. So the LCAP's mission is to help people reduce the isolation and stress of living with AIDS survivor syndrome. So and AIDS survivor syndrome was first coined by Taz Anderson, the founder of Let's Kick Ass in San Francisco, to actually explain the trauma that people who were witnesses to the plague years have gone through. And our organization is welcoming to long-term survivors, witnesses to the plague years, who I define as people who are HIV positive, who are HIV negative, who are caretakers to people who were living with HIV. Back in the 80s and 90s, we were not expected to live with HIV very long. So that trauma that goes along with having been a witness to those years is what we describe as AIDS survivor syndrome. Next slide. And to give you a little picture about the area here, the Coachella Valley of Riverside County is estimated to have over 9,000 people living with HIV. More than 50% are over the age of 50. In the Palm Springs area, we're known as being a retirement community. So a lot of our LGBTQ community from around the country comes to Palm Springs to retire. And if you're of that age, of retirement age, you obviously lived through the HIV/AIDS plague years. So chances are you are somebody who has had that that experience of trauma, if not already HIV positive for 30 or 40 years. We have a mailing list of over 400. We have many activities. Most people attend some of them, not all of them. So our events end up enhancing our outreach. And we've been blessed from getting grants from organizations like Beam, Pharma, Richmond, Ermit Aid Foundation, and ViiV since 2019. And our activities have expanded from potlucks and coffees to include discussion groups and bus trips. Next slide, please. So here's some pictures of some of our things we do. In the top left, you can see some of the advocacy that we do. The top right is one of our pizza nights. The bottom left is kind of an astronomy night when we went out to the high desert to look at the stars. And then in the bottom right, there's a bowling event. We do bowling just about, I think, 2 times a month. Next slide, please. The picture to the left is one where for HIV Long-Term Survivors Day, and the people that we had there for our dinner, and we had speakers. As you can see on the right, Paul Edmond, who is the City of Hope survivor, was one of our speakers there, and one of our longtime members, Richard Bass in the center, also gave a speech as well. Next slide. And as I was saying, our fundraising, we were successful to be able to finance our second bus trip this year. We're now doing 2 bus trips a year. We did 1 last year. This was going to the Norton Simon Museum in Pasadena, and we've 2 times the last 2 years we've done trips to Pride in the Pines in Idlewild, California. Next slide. So during COVID, obviously, as Linda was saying, we had to teach everybody how to use Zoom. So we went to Zoom and we started a discussion group to keep people from isolating. And it was named the Roundtable. And it started again in 2021. In-person meetings were added once COVID dissipated. In 2022, the discussion topics, as it says, are picked in advance by facilitators and include topics like identity, history, sexual wellness, end of planning, and general health issues. Next slide. And as a result of that experience, and thanks to a grant from Beam, we worked with another organization called the Brothers of the Desert, which is a gay male philanthropy group in the Palm Springs area. To create another discussion group called Barbershop, a Black men's space for honest talk about sexual wellness. And we started our first monthly meeting in September 2023. And I don't know, I think maybe in 2024, we might move to bi-weekly, but we'll see. And in the picture there, you can see we had a dinner once for our, this is our community advisory group that we had formed prior to starting the meeting, so that we could get some community input as to what it is that we really needed in the community as far as a discussion group, and how to go to the community for support and sustainability. Next slide, please. So I wanted to include this because this really kind of got on topic for me. Back when I was diagnosed in 2006, I was a volunteer for AIDS Healthcare Foundation, and they asked if I could be in a billboard campaign. And so I was, at that time, I was a professional chef. I was catering to the stars in the Hollywood Hills, and so they said, let's get you done up in your chef outfit and everything like that. And this ad appeared in billboards across Los Angeles. The reason why I bring it up is because I was very proud to do this. It was a way for me to get out of my HIV shell, to actually to let people know that I was HIV positive, and I wasn't afraid to acknowledge that, and to perhaps give hope for people who were struggling with stigma. But as we're talking about employment, I'll tell you that once this ad went up, my business, as it related to being a personal chef, took a dive. And my clients who were very happy with my cooking and my catering skills did not feel that hiring somebody who was living with HIV was the way to go. And I actually wondered about the impact of people going to Los Angeles restaurants. People who were wondering, is the chef at my restaurant HIV positive? Not that it would have made a difference, right? I mean, I think within 6 weeks of my diagnosis, being on medications, I got to undetectable levels, but that's just not the way things work in our world full of stigma. Next slide, please. So at Let's Kick Ass, we're an organization that's run by, led by, populated by people who are living with HIV. So some of the issues that we have are permissive use of images and stories. We have to be conscious about how we show pictures, who's in pictures. We're always asking people if they want to be in pictures, and how they get distributed. I like to use the phrase witnesses to the plague years because I think it's a little bit more inclusive than just saying long-term survivors or any other terms that might express something similar. I think I like to be inclusive of people who are HIV negative, who are our allies, and people who have been, in the battle with us. And we have been developing programs that are targeted and broadly inclusive. Next slide. So I do have to talk about the Americans with Disabilities Act, but I want to, frame this in a bit because I think the Americans with Disabilities Act gives us a bit of, comfort in terms of being in workplaces where we are HIV positive. And I think it could be a good discussion talking about how people who are living with HIV, how do you work with the potential conflicts? And the Americans with Disabilities Act is something that actually gets us to a point where we feel that we might have at least some legal protection. So I just want to just give a little bit of an introduction here. It became law in 1990. It is a civil rights law that prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities in all areas of public life, including jobs, schools, transportation, and all public and private places that are open to the general public. And it gives civil rights protections to individuals with disabilities, similar to those provided to individuals on the basis of race, color, sex, national origin, age, and religion, and it guarantees equal opportunity for individuals with disabilities in public accommodations, employment, transportation, state and local government services, and telecommunications. This is federal law, folks. So to the extent that a company or a conflict is going to be adjudicated in federal courts, or if your own state has a similar Disabilities Act, so that you can go to state court and demand these protections, then you're in good shape. We all know from everything that we've been seeing in the political realm these days that some states are not friendly to LGBT people or HIV positive people. And in fact, as you all know, there are some states that still criminalize HIV. So, as much as we get comfort with the Americans with Disabilities Act, then there is, some concern. You might have some concern in your state as to whether or not those rights are going to be covered. Next slide, please. With the Americans with Disabilities Act, someone who is HIV positive will easily meet this definition because HIV substantially limits major life activities, such as functions of the immune system. So if there was a question about whether HIV positive is something that the Disabilities Act covers, that should be something that you should be able to take out of your emotions. I think people, in my experience, people who are living with HIV might recall that many of us who were diagnosed with HIV and had an AIDS diagnosis could actually, through the Social Security system, have themselves designated as disabled for the purposes of getting Social Security disability. This is a different issue. Someone who is subjected to or prohibited employment actions such as failure to hire or termination because of HIV or the suspicion of HIV could also easily show that an action was taken against him or her because of an actual or perceived impairment. So the thing that's being brought up here is failure to hire or termination. And those are issues that I think can come up. But I think those are issues that sometimes can be very subjective. So if you feel that you were discriminated against because of your race, for example, when you're being interviewed, you're going to want to build up some sort of evidence that race was an issue. It's the same issue with HIV. You're going to want to build up some kind of a case that there was something about HIV, and that could be, if somebody said in the course of an interview, "What is your medical status?" Which is a question that they're not supposed to be asking. If they might ask if you're HIV positive. I know when I was diagnosed with HIV, I was in the midst of an interview, and I had my first interview before I was hospitalized with HIV. And I probably had, I was probably about 20 pounds heavier. I probably didn't look gaunt. And when I actually was hospitalized at the time when they asked me to come in for a second interview. I put them off for 2 weeks and then came in to interview again. And I was probably looking pretty bad. And I was diagnosed with pneumocystis pneumonia as well. So I was just getting back my capacity to breathe well. So to actually have a full blown interview where I was going to have enough breath to express myself at 2 weeks after I was in the hospital, that wasn't really going to happen. But I really wanted to do this job interview, so I went through it anyway. I don't think that anybody asked me about my health status or whether or not I had HIV. But I know I sure didn't look good. So, I don't think I would have had a case in that instance for, using the Americans with Disabilities Act, mostly because you could probably see this. But, who knows? Maybe there's some attorney who works with Americans with Disabilities Act who might have, after hearing my story, might have said, "Oh, you might actually have a case." I don't know. Next slide. In most situations, you can keep your condition private, which I did during that interview. Generally, employers cannot ask you whether you're HIV positive or whether you have any other medical condition before making a job offer. If you do talk about your condition, the employer cannot discriminate against you, and it must keep the information confidential, even from coworkers. If you wish to discuss your condition with coworkers, you may choose to do so. You may notice I actually put these QR codes in this slide and the slide before. If you wanted to actually read this EEOC document, you could just actually access it by using the QR code. Next slide. So this is going towards job performance. So if you go back to my example of being ill and not looking good, let's say I had HIV when I was diagnosed when I was actually employed. So, and my employer should in that case actually give me, some accommodation for whatever, if I needed to, for example, take sick days for my hospitalization, if I needed to, take some time because as I had inside of that interview, I wasn't able to express myself well because of problems with my breath. I might have needed to take additional days off. Your employer should make reasonable accommodations. So there's some examples I put in here: altered break and work schedules, changes in supervisory methods, accommodations for visual impairments, unpaid time, permission to work from home, reassignment to a vacant position. So these are things that you would have to ask for. These are things that the employer could actually approve, deny. So these are all issues that could potentially come up with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Next slide, please. And in the act, it says employers are not allowed to discriminate against you simply because you have HIV. This includes firing you, rejecting you for a job or promotion, and forcing you to take leave. And harassment based on disability is not allowed. You should tell your employer about any harassment. These are things that are all, if you're working for a company of a reasonable size and they have an employee handbook, they should mention things about harassment. It should mention things about your rights for medical leave. Those are things that you probably should go to first before you would ever even consider hiring a lawyer or considering going to the Americans with Disabilities Act for protection. Next slide. The ADA requires that medical information of employees and applicants be kept confidential. I think somebody had mentioned HIPAA once before already. Medical information should be kept confidential. And an employer who violates the Americans with Disabilities Act is often subject to charges based on failure to hire, failure to accommodate, or wrongful termination. So this is just kind of giving you some examples. So it's either at the prior to employment, it's during employment, or if they're asking you to go. And I think that might be it. Next slide. Oh, okay. It is illegal for your employer to retaliate against you, and you can always contact the EEOC, and I put the telephone numbers and their website for if you did have inquiries and you saw the QR codes for the basic information. So I think that's the last slide.
Perfect. Thank you, Jax, for your expertise in the legal aspects of creating inclusive workspaces for people living with HIV, including the American Disabilities Act, and also sharing your very very vulnerable story of living with HIV and navigating the professional space and how you give back to the community through LCAPs. And we do have a few minutes for questions if anyone wants to raise their Zoom hand, come off mic, and ask any questions for Jax for his about his presentation before we move on. It's going to take a second.
And I want to say thank you for all the people who were actually putting up things in the chat. I swear that chat was flying by so fast, I couldn't even see what was going on. So, and every now and then I was looking at it to say, oh, I really want to say something about this, but honestly, it went by so fast. So if you did see, if there's something that I didn't touch on, because I think there were a few things I saw in the chat that I think I did touch on later. So you might not need to ask that question, but so much of this really is based on what your basic roots of what you think is right and wrong, right? I mean, the chances are if something that's happening in your workplace that you feel is not going right, chances are it probably isn't going right. And you, like Linda was saying, you know, hopefully you have somebody who's somebody you trust in your organization, that you feel you can talk to, right? Without retaliation, without harassment, without all those things. And so that that you can actually, you know, feel some relief. I mean, sometimes we feel like we're the only people in this organization that get us. But sometimes in those cases, sometimes we have to reach outside of our organizations. We have to not necessarily go to the EEOC, but find our peers, maybe in other AIDS service organizations, and say, you know, I'm really struggling with this issue in my workplace. Am I crazy? You know, am I in the right space? Because you know, we can't work unless we feel comfortable in our workspaces. And if you have to go outside of your workspace to find out what's going on in the rest of the world, you know, you really need to do that, just for your own sanity, for your own day-to-day work. And yeah, so I think oftentimes, even as an attorney, oftentimes we talk to our clients and we say, well, what do you think is the right thing to do? And chances are that right thing to do is going to lead you to solutions that make sense both for you and your employer. And the other thing I wanted to say too, I mean, since we're talking about employment, and we spent a lot of time already this morning talking about entry-level workers, and I think it's important for us to really look at our entry-level workers, and look at our job descriptions, and make sure that we're actually living up to whatever those job descriptions entailed. Oftentimes we can get ourselves out of legal trouble by adhering to what we actually put into writing. So if you actually have a job description that says that this person is supposed to be doing X, Y, and Z, and they're not doing X, Y, and Z, then chances are you are going to get in trouble. So, you know, once you've hired that person, kind of go back to like saying, what was it that we were advertising this job to do, so that you make sure that you're, you know, doing those things, and meeting those expectations for the employee. And I think, you know, we talked about a little bit also about training, and to make sure that people get the adequate training that they need to even not only just do their current job that they were hired for, but maybe to actually move them along in their careers. So much of what I think and aging, you know, I stand on the shoulders of so many giants who were able to see my potential and say, you know, this is where, you know, you could possibly go, but you have this and this and this to learn. And then they spent some time, at least if they couldn't teach it to me, showing me where I could learn, where I could find out the answers. So I think as you know, potential mentors, we should always be looking out to find those spaces where we can point our employees to get more information, and to actually see spaces that they may not have seen. I think a lot of people who spend their time on the street feel a little disoriented in office buildings because they just never thought that they would ever be inside of an office building. And office buildings aren't oftentimes the most welcoming spaces. We know that as healthcare professionals, right? Because all of us go to the doctor, and every time we go inside of a doctor's office, we start thinking that that doctor's office is not a welcoming space. So we need to, you know, get over to the point where we make those offices welcoming spaces, and that office is theirs as much as it is ours. I'm sorry, JB, I got the soapbox for a bit, but you know, if there are other questions, I'd certainly be willing to answer them.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jax, for that. And that's like a perfect segue into our next presenter. And then if anyone has any other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we can address them there. But I want to keep us moving so we can get through all the great content that we put together for you. So I'm passing it over to Ron Nazy over at the center in Las Vegas. So take it away.
All right, thanks, JV. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ron Schnese, and I use he/him pronouns. I'm with the LGBTQIA Plus Center of Southern Nevada, or just the center as we call it locally. Next slide, please. So we are a community center in Southern Nevada. We serve the LGBTQIA Two-Spirit Plus community and anyone else in the community seeking help. We want to empower everyone to embrace and live their full, authentic lives. Next slide, please. So who is this person presenting to you today? Well, I am a person in long-term recovery. I have lived experience in substance use, mental health, living with HIV, hepatitis C, incarceration, institutions, homelessness, a whole list of others. I'm going to be talking to you today about how to build inclusive and supportive environments for people like me living with HIV, and those who are over 50, not like me just yet. I hope you take away knowledge about the center, its mission, its values, its programs, how it welcomes those with lived, I like Linda's suggestion, those with living experience, to help continue engaging the community and enhance its organizational culture. Thank you. So at the center, our core values help us stay on course in our journey to continue providing a safe, inclusive, and diverse work culture. These volunteers embrace the authenticity that our staff, volunteers, and our community members and partners bring to our city and enhance the vibrant collage of our shared space. We truly strive for everyone who enters our doors to empower them to live their authentic selves. Next slide, please. We are actually celebrating our 30th anniversary. We opened in 1993. We have grown to become a staple of the Las Vegas community, and we continue to provide amazing programs and services as well as safe spaces within the community inside these walls for everyone here to thrive. So a little bit about the center. At the center, we provide a host of services and programs for the entire community, including our Arlene Cooper Community Health Center that provides HIV, hepatitis B and C testing, STI testing, and treatment for all of those. We also provide PrEP and PEP navigation, HIV primary care, gender-affirming care with HRT. We have a lot of support groups for those diagnosed with HIV here at the center. We have both English and Spanish groups. They have a wide selection of individuals, newly diagnosed, long-term survivors, people of all ages, races, ethnicities, you name it. Our linkage to care team that I am on assists individuals who misuse substances and those who are vulnerable to overdose by facilitating opportunities. We ensure they're connected to services that promote harm reduction, safe recovery from substance use, and just basically providing them connection to care. We have youth and family services programming that has many support groups, programs to help them develop their authentic selves, as well as provide their family support and education. We have an amazing program called Pivot here that is for youth and their caregivers that is evidence-based and phenomenal. One of my favorite programs, though, is our senior services. We provide them on-site. In those programs, we offer education, awareness, referrals, resources, assistance that really helps the individual in becoming self-sufficient and have an active role in their own wellness and well-being. We also, as a person in long-term recovery, I'm very proud to announce that we offer many different recovery support mutual aid groups. We also have a lot of trans and gender diverse programming, inclusive programming, various community support groups, and are committed to closing gaps and barriers within our community and engagement with partnerships. Our volunteers alone performed over 22,000 hours of service in 32 different areas last year and are essential to helping us deliver our programs and services. That's why I want to talk to you today about how to provide an inclusive area for your volunteers, as well as, the rest of your staff who are HIV positive. Next slide, thank you. So here at the center, we recognize the value and benefit of hiring those with lived experience and the wealth of information and energy they bring to our culture. Having unique insight and firsthand knowledge of different systems and commodities helps us to better serve our community that we are in. Like I said, I'm a person with lived experience. I can bring that knowledge into my direct field and help shape our programming so that it better serves our clients. And we really rely on the lived experience of those who are in our volunteer programs, who are in our employees, stuff like that, to help shape these programs. Our entire team recognizes the value of the collective experiences that we all have had and what our ideas can bring to the table. As you can see here, we can provide practical advice on strategies. Involving people with lived experience in planning and policy development, it really can increase the credibility and trust within your community to those you're trying to serve. Next slide, please. As I said, I had to throw in some pictures. It's my favorite group here. Act 3, it's our senior programming. We have quite a few different days that they come in. Mondays is Men's Game Day. Wednesdays, we have Wise Women's Wednesdays. And all guys are strictly forbidden from even entering that space when it's open. So I love that. Next slide, please. Some of our people in our Act 3 also do many volunteers hours with us. Russ here, he has actually been with the center. He's one of our longest running volunteers and has logged over 8,000 hours himself in volunteerism. He's dedicated to our core values, our mission, the people we serve. And we are actually in the process of onboarding him right now as an employee of the center to encourage him to help with the development of our senior programming. Next slide, please. And when this guy isn't performing with the Las Vegas Men Chorus, Mike is busy adding to his over 4,000 hours of volunteerism. He's a bright spot in everyone's day, always willing to lend a hand or have a heartfelt conversation, always greets our clinic appointments with compassion and sincerity, and is just a genuine nice guy. Everybody loves having a talk with him. All right, next slide, please. But here at the center, we make sure to ensure nothing favors younger or older demographics. I want to stress that again. We want to make sure that nothing is favoring younger or older demographics. We really rely on the skill that each individual can bring to the table. We place them in positions that their lived experience and talents align. We make sure that our volunteers all feel that they have something to contribute. We bring in outside groups to help our seniors and our volunteers learn about different programs, resources, various education sessions, and more. That takes place on Thursdays here. We'll bring in a whole host of different kind of trainings for them. Next slide, please. So what can your organization do to be more inclusive of age, HIV status, other lived experience? As an organizational or corporate leader, you can begin by looking at your company's culture. Some steps to begin to take are: be aware of the unconscious bias that is within your organization. Everybody has unconscious bias, even, nobody is immune to it. But just be aware of it, be cognizant, and that way, you don't fall into that trap of, relying solely on your own thinking. Develop a strategic plan on how to maintain confidentiality of those who might disclose their status or any other lived experience that they might have. If it is essential to their role, communicate the importance of that experience with the rest of your staff. Older adults have a lot of experience to bring to the table. They bring a lot of energy, just highlights, stuff like that. Also, you can definitely start addressing stigmas within your space regarding the HIV, ageism, other areas such as people in long-term recovery. Addressing those stigmas head on can really help bring in those with lived experience. Mix up your teams. Adding those people with lived experience brings insight and unique perspective to different roles throughout the company. Include them on planning events. Include them when you're going over your company's procedures and policies, stuff like that. Make inclusivity part of your DEI initiatives. And I don't just mean, make a DEI initiative. I mean, make sure that you're making it work. If it's not apparent at all levels of your structure, it isn't working for your company or organization. So really bring that into the culture. For your employees and the rest of your staff, get educated. Bring in education sessions on HIV, how to support somebody who's positive, and how it does and does not spread. That is important. Offer education sessions. Oh, I just want that one, sorry. Think about having internship programs for mature students or those with HIV. You know, internship programs. Older people going back to college like myself, you know, we definitely need to log some of those internship hours to get our degrees. So, you know, think about us. Create policies regarding non-discrimination on the basis of age, HIV status, recovery status, and other lived experience. Don't just assume that it's going to be a common sense, because common sense isn't common. It relies on shared experience of a specific community. Make sure it is spelled out in your non-discrimination policies about ageism, HIV status, other lived experience. Above all, practice what you preach. If you want your team to recognize the importance of lived experience in our senior community and others, their value within the workforce or volunteers, then show your staff, please. They will model your behaviors. Next slide, please. Something I've been seeing a lot of talked about on here is boundaries, and I love that because doing the work we do, it has the potential to become overwhelming for anybody. Boundaries with yourself, your staff, your organization can really help everybody. Remember, those lived experiences come with a variety of skills, but they might not be entirely familiar with your specific organizational culture, or they're going to have limited experience in professional settings. You know, so start by modeling the behavior you'd like your staff and volunteers to emulate. What does it look like? Well, first off, there needs to be clear expectations that once someone does go home for the day, they leave work at work. Oftentimes, as a person with limited professional experience, when I first got started, I would get replies from emails from my boss at like 7 o'clock at night and think that I had to reply right away. So, you know, be cognizant of that. When are you responding to emails with your staff or with your volunteers? Keep that boundary, you know, let them know that when they're not at work, you know, they're on their own time. Help the new staff and volunteers to prioritize their tasks so they can get the most out of their day. That is not something that's not a skill that I came to working with. You know, I thought everything had to be handled as it came in right away. I didn't understand how to prioritize, and I would get easily overwhelmed. And it's because of some very caring supervisors taking me to the side and showing me, okay, so this is how, you know, they taught me the 3 burners: the front burner, the middle burner, and the back burner. So I didn't know these things, you know. Also, don't message or call employees after they go home. If you do have to reach out, make sure it's not becoming a habit, and stress that what you're reaching out about can wait until the following day. All right, make sure your employees and volunteers know when you are available and be available during those times. Have open door hours. Schedule a meeting. If they're unaware of how to schedule a meeting with your software, make sure you're teaching them these things. You know, make sure there's role clarity. You want to minimize ambiguity in positions. I know we all wear many hats, especially in the nonprofit world, you know, but this is your chance to utilize the variety of skills your team has. You know, give them role clarity on what they need to be working on. And we're all adults, and we can work pretty harmoniously. We can also typically work out misunderstandings, tensions, you know, not seeing eye to eye all on our own. However, if a conflict with the staff does arise and it drags on, be there to provide unbiased mediation and de-escalation. De-escalation is an amazing, they have a lot of great trainings on that. So next slide, please. So again, when we're talking about work-life balance, there's many behaviors you can model for your team, including self-care. So to operate at our best, we need to be taking care of ourselves and promote a healthy work-life balance. As leaders, you can not only live these, but offer the opportunity for those within your organization to promote wellness at work. Here's just some things that I've thought about how you and your management leadership can help support the 8 dimensions of wellness. You see the 8 dimensions on your page. Emotional. This is the ability to cope with life and building sustainable relationships. So how do you support staff and volunteers when they have a crisis? How do you aim to help them build their own resiliency when they make mistakes at work? People with lived experience can often feel overburdened by making a mistake and focus solely on the mistake and not the learning aspect of it. So help them with that. Physical activity, nutrition, adequate sleep. Do you guys have healthy snacks in your break room? How are you scheduling people so that you can make sure to promote a healthy work-life balance for them? Occupational, are they happy with their choice of work? Are your employees and volunteers happy and appropriately challenged? Intellectual, the ability to recognize one's own talents and seek ways to use them. Are you fostering growth for your team? How about the volunteers? Are you giving them abilities to foster growth? Financial, are they happy about one's financial situation? When it comes to your employees and your structure, what's your compensation look like? How about your benefits package? Do they get bonuses? These things really do bring a sense of security for people. Excuse me. The social aspect of wellness is a sense of connectedness and belonging. So do you provide or foster an inclusive, culturally diverse work atmosphere? And how do you do so? The environmental aspect of one's surroundings, how are their surroundings occupied? Do you guys recycle? Do you have clean, pleasant workspaces? Are you giving back to the environment at large? Do you guys provide volunteer opportunities to clean up the neighborhood? Those kinds of things. And last, definitely not least, is spiritual. When I say that, it means it relates to the values and beliefs that help you find meaning and purpose. So do you encourage everyone and let them know specifically how they are helping to the overall organization? Not just a pat on the back and attaboy, but let them know what they're doing to contribute, brings added value. So there's an excellent self-survey. I included the QR code there. It's a compassion satisfaction, compassion fatigue survey, and then you can find it there. It's called the Professional Quality of Life Scale, and it helps detect compassion, burnout, and secondary traumas levels. Those of us who are working with people in, as I like to call, the helpers, we can always, we get secondary trauma from some of the people that come in. So if someone needs to take a few sick days to get mentally back in the game, including ourselves, let them, all right? This is considered preventative health care. Next slide, please. And of course, knowledge is power. Someone once told me when I was deciding if I wanted to go to college that education is the one thing in life that nobody can take away from you, no matter what. So more training can not only grow your team's collective knowledge base, it helps individuals with development. They can gain new skills, grow professionally. It also serves to provide more understanding across the board. Like I was mentioning before, we have a variety of education sessions for our different programmings, but we also offer trainings from our staff to other organizations like cultural competencies, HIV 101, harm reduction education, and a lot more. We're consistently bringing in lunch and learn opportunities for our staff and volunteers and workshops for them to attend so they can enhance their own skills and trainings. If you're interested, you can always get some great ideas from local community colleges or partners that offer trainings. I saw a lot of people asking about Linda's contact info. This is the exact place to learn about those. So you can bring these in to enhance your company. Some of the ones that I thought just off the top of my head were cultural competency, HIV basics, confidentiality training. A lot of people might not understand where those boundaries in that lie. Boundaries is another good training. I mentioned before, crisis de-escalation. For those of you who work directly with clients, how many of you or your staff are Safe Talk or Assist trained? You can usually do that through the Office of Suicide Prevention, along with mental health first aid, team building workshops, overdose prevention, CPR, first aid, any other ones that you can think that your organizational needs might have. Next slide. So what do I want you to take away? Well, I have a few things, but if you can just pick one, two, or maybe all of them, I just want you to have some key takeaways. Building some more inclusive and community-centered programs within your organization is beneficial in so many ways. Those with lived experience are able to give a perspective, a level of empathy that enhances your programs. And remember, HIV isn't what it used to be. Today, people are living well into their senior years and thriving with it. And these people over 50 are still very vital to the community, and they bring such an amazing wealth of knowledge with them. Above all, remember, everybody with lived experience has a lot to give to their community. Next slide. Here's my contact information. Please feel free to take it down and reach out if you're interested to learn more about the center, any of its resources, programming, stuff like that. I appreciate that. And I just wanted to give a quick shout out to, I've seen multiple peers in the room. Shout out to all the peer workers out there. Lived experience really is proving to be a valid source of, a valid resource for different organizations. And next slide, I believe that's it.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Ron. Truly appreciate your outline of the center and the different ways that people can build more supportive and inclusive spaces for their own organizations as well. I just want to be mindful of time and to make sure that we get to all the content. So if you all have any questions about Ron's presentation, please feel free to email him. I'll also be distributing people's contact information after the session as well. So to move us along, I wanted to introduce our resource guide for supporting HIV positive peers and volunteers. So there's a QR code here, and I'm dropping the link in the chat right now. So we're going to be using this resource guide to help frame our next discussion. And so, like Linda said, all of these, to make a more inclusive and supportive space, it requires a change in your organization, in your culture, and the way that you do things. So this resource guide helps you assess your team's readiness for change. It includes a survey and draft questions that kind of assess like where your team is in building a more inclusive and supportive space. So I'm going to take a little bit for you all to get into the resource guide, and then going to put out our breakout discussion rooms here. So there is going to be one change. So our first breakout room is going to focus on providing support for HIV positive peers in the workplace. The second room is going to be about creating inclusive policies and procedures. The third room is where the change is, and we're going to focus on addressing HIV stigma in the workplace. And then the fourth room is identifying professional development opportunities. So I'm launching a poll right now, and choose which room you want to go into. So we'll take about 10 minutes to discuss these. And our various speakers are also going to be in those rooms as well to help facilitate the discussion. So again, choose the room that you want to go into for your breakout discussion, and then we'll go into those, and then we'll come back here to close out. So thank you again, everyone, for coming in and just being here with us for this really important discussion on making more intentional, supportive, inclusive spaces for people living with HIV. And I see we're about at 50% response. So again, if you don't respond to this question, you're going to be placed into a random room. So I'd much rather have you choose versus us choosing for you. So again, the first room is advice on providing support for HIV positive colleagues. The second room is creating inclusive policies and procedures. The third room is addressing HIV stigma in the workplace. The fourth room is professional development for people living and aging with HIV. So it looks like we're almost at quorum. So let me just go ahead and just for a few more seconds before I end this, and everyone else is just going to be assigned randomly. So see you in the breakout rooms, everyone. I'll see you in about 10 minutes to close out this session. Okay. Here we go. Let's get this down. There. Perfect. So these rooms are opening up now. You should be prompted to get into those rooms. So go ahead and go into your respective room, and then we'll come back to close out this session. So it looks like there's a lot of interest in the addressing stigma room and the professional development room. So there we go. And then all of you can see. Perfect. Perfect. So
Hey JB, I was sent to the incorrect room. Can I get to room 4 for professional development when you have a moment?
yes, of course. Sorry about
Hey,
that.
no worries.
I don't think I've been sent to. I don't see that I've been sent to any other room or anything. And I don't see where I can click on to join my own room here. Oh, this is Kenneth. Yes, Gary. Las Vegas. Let's see.
1 second. So Jen, you want to move to what was the room again?
It should be the professional development room.
Yes, there we go.
Thank you.
Is this room 3 right here? I don't see anything denoting that.
Sorry, can you say your name so I can route you to the right room?
Okay, Kenneth Gary, peer navigator,
Yeah.
community health worker, peer navigator, Las Vegas, Nevada.
Thank you.
I can help with this too, JB.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Jadon.
Mhm. Does anybody else need to go somewhere where they're not currently?
I don't know if I'm in a room or not. This is Kenneth
Kenneth,
Gary.
you're going to, which room did you want to go to?
3, stigma in the workplace.
Okay, perfect.
Stigma in the workplace.
Yeah, that one, JB.
Yeah, I got that.
Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Anyone else unassigned that wants to go to a specific room here?
Yeah, I chose number 4 and got put in number 3. Is it a?
Oh, sorry about that.
No worries. It looks pretty well subscribed, so.
Alexandra, did you have a room you wanted to go to? Lauren Lopez, did you have a room you wanted to go to? Julia Galstad? Javante Wilson? Ravina Samar? GP, were you going to be facilitating a room?
I was, so let me go ahead.
Yeah, you should probably go there. I got that. I can move the people. Because I think these people are just offline. I'll stay here in case people come back or get moved around. Julia Gosted, you want to move to room 3? I'm moving you now. Give me just a moment. Looking for your name on a long list of names. And Lauren Lopez, I also saw you wanted to go to room 3. Anybody else, you can let me know if you would like to go to a breakout room. Another word for lessons learned.
So we are getting people back. And so just want to thank everyone for coming to the session and staying through the entire time, listening through our great panel of speakers here. I do want to mention that we have an evaluation here, and it really helps us understand the different needs for our for HIV and aging services and how we can better improve our training services and identify the different learning topics that you all want to see in the future.